because she's divine feminine and such a beautiful Shakti at the ashram. Like I said, there's no introduction and no amount of words that will probably do justice to a proper introduction. But once she speaks and once you hear her, you'll have that connection and that understanding for yourself. Che Gange.
Jai Gange, and thank you to our beloved and beautiful Ganganandani Ji for that beautiful introduction and also overview of different service initiatives and projects. So we've got two options, and I have a bit of a preference, but I'm happy to leave the decision up to you. Option one is I give you a talk about Navratri. Happy to do it. But option two is that instead of that, we simply create the spaciousness here for you all to ask any questions that you may have. And I'm very happy with that too. It seems like, it's like I have something flying in my hair. Oh, there we go. That might be even more interesting to you, but not necessarily, so I don't want to make that decision on your behalf. What are your feelings? Yes. I'm sorry? Second one, okay. Other thoughts? Second one? Both, okay. Well, let's do this. If you are really deeply interested in a talk on Navratri, raise your hand. Okay. If you would prefer to use all of the time we have for whatever questions you have, raise your hand. Okay, so we'll do a bit of a talk on Navratri, but I'll try to do it in such a way that we end up with plenty of time as well for questions. Good. So, for me, one of the most beautiful aspects of the Hindu tradition, the Vedic tradition, what we call Sanatan Dharma, is the reverence for the feminine. It's the only religion I know of in the world, the only culture I know of in the world that goes beyond a level of equality and respect, actually into a deep, deep reverence. It's certainly the only religion I know that has 18 unique days a year dedicated exclusively to the worship of the Divine Feminine. Now, on these days, we celebrate the Divine Feminine in many different forms. And in the Ganga Aarti, in videos that we've been posting online, I've been doing a bit on each individual day, because every day is a different aspect of the Mother Goddess. But there's also another really beautiful about it that I think would be really helpful and meaningful to share for you all, which is we've got 9 days. And it's said that on the first 3 days, the energy of the Divine Mother in that form of Ma Durga or Ma Kali, sort of that fierce form that I was speaking about last night even in the Aarti, that form of destruction, disillusion, removing from you all of that which is holding you back, that form is really, really present on the first 3 days. On the second 3 days, the form of Mahalakshmi, this embodiment of abundance and prosperity. And then on the last 3 days, the embodiment of Ma Saraswati, or wisdom. And to me, it's really beautiful to think about like that, because it really includes not just the 3 different aspects, but kind of how that feminine principle, how that mother goddess works through us in order. So if we begin with that aspect, that fierce aspect, the aspect that people talk about being afraid of, well, what's she here for? She's here to quite literally kill the demons. Like, those are the stories. Every night as you read the story of the different embodiment of the mother goddess, it's this form of the goddess, and here's the demon she killed. Here's the weapons she has in her hands. Here's where she killed the demon. So she's here to remove that negative energy. And there are great stories, and they're wonderful stories, and I always love it when the hero of the story against the huge demon is actually the goddess, just because there's something very beautiful about the feminine principle doing battle with and vanquishing the demonic energy. But ultimately, when we go deeper, what we realize is, oh wait, that's not just outside. I mean, all of these teachings, they're not just great stories. They're actually all about us. I mean, even when you go into the epics, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, yes, they happened. Yes, there's history. Yes, more and more these days, actually, through science, we are uncovering evidence. This is not mythology. These are not parables that somebody made up just to teach lessons, but actually there's historical facts in alignment with the epics. But even along with historical facts, what we've got on an even deeper level is, what does it mean today? What does it mean to me? How does it impact my life? It's not just, oh yeah, thousands and thousands of years ago. In this land we call Kurukshetra, or in this land we call Ayodhya or Lanka, this happened. But what does that mean to me today? And so when we look at the demons, the goddess is slaughtering, each of them represents different aspects of our own ego. And there isn't a lot of time to go into the specifics right now. I'll give you an overview. We do have a whole series on YouTube of literally every single day, that goddess, that ego, that energy center chakra. So you can dive more into that online. But the forms of the ego are things like I-ness, mine-ness, insatiable desires. These aspects of the ego that bring us into illusion, that make us think, I am separate. I am the one. It's all about me. And of course, this functions on both a positive side and a negative side. So it functions in the, I am the smartest, I am the best, I am the most capable. And it also functions in the exact opposite. I am useless, I am worthless, I am stupid, nobody likes me. They're both games of the ego. They're just different faces of the same ego. But in both cases, it's all about me. As this individual, distinct, separate me-ness. And of course, along with that comes mine-ness, this sense of this is mine, whether it's an achievement, an accomplishment, a right, a possession, a title, an earning, whatever it may be. But this mineness. There's a very, very beautiful teaching in the Upanishads that I typically quote for a different reason, and I'm going to quote today for a different reason. And the teaching says, Ishavasyamidam sarvam, yat kincha jagatyam jagat, tena tyaktena bunjita, ma gridaha kasya svidhanam. And it means, what I usually quote it about, is that everything in the universe is pervaded by the divine. There's nothing that is not divine. And therefore, by definition, it means care for each other, take care of the creation, live consciously, take care of our environment, don't hoard, etc. The second bit, though, says, therefore, be very careful, because nothing belongs to you. Nothing is yours. And one way of interpreting it is nothing is yours because everything is the divine's, therefore, take care of it, tread lightly, tread lovingly, tread consciously. Another way of looking at it, when you drop into the Advaita Vedanta way of thinking, is nothing is yours because everything is God. There's nothing but God. How can you own God? If everything is just one supreme reality, and we are all just reflections of that same one supreme reality, how can something be yours? There's not even individual things to claim as things. To assume something is mine must be predicated on the idea that it's actually a distinct thing that one could claim ownership over. And that core teaching of Vedanta says there is nothing but the divine. There is nothing but consciousness, nothing but the supreme reality. So get out of your head, for God's sakes. Let go of this illusion that you are somehow this separate being, that somehow you could own something, possess something. So these are aspects of what we call ego. In the West, in English, when we talk about ego, we usually just mean arrogance, like, oh, that person is really egotistic, like they're so full of themselves. But ego is actually bigger than that and vaster than that. It's the whole sense of me as a separate individual. It's the whole sense of me as the story I tell myself about me. Here's where I'm from. Here's what my childhood was like. Here's the things I'm good at. Here's the things I'm not good at. Here's what I've achieved. Here are all of my issues and complexes. Here are my skills. Here's what I'm great at. Here's what I want to learn. Here's what I need. Here's what I want. Here are the gifts I have to share. Like all of that. The places where we feel abundant, and also the places where we feel like we're lacking. It all comes under the umbrella of what we call ego, because it implies and necessitates an idea that I am a separate individual with a story. That I am the story, that I am the body, I am the history. So the mother goddess comes in, and she annihilates this ego. Along with it, the desires, because of course, if I'm a separate being, then I want more and more. Possessions, money, acclaim, power, love, respect, etc., etc. She comes in and she literally does battle with all of these different demonic beings as they are personified in the stories. But within us, what it really is, it's a letting go. I mean, think about being a kid and your mom, you've been outside playing in the dirt and you're so happy and you come in and mom takes a sponge and she scrubs you in the bathtub with a sponge. Now, there's something universal about kids and baths, which is for some reason they seem to hate them. All over the world, I've seen little naked kids running through the house yelling, "No, no, no, no," whenever moms are trying to get them into the bath. Now, you would think that the kid would be really happy. Like, hey, this is so great. I went out, I got all dirty. Now there's this being who's prepared to scrub me clean in a bathtub full of warm, sudsy water. Like, what could be better? But somehow, universally, naked kids run through houses yelling, "No, no, no, no." There's an attachment, even before we can articulate it or understand it, to that dirt that I've just accumulated. And there is a fear of getting scrubbed clean, of getting that dirt removed, of being free of that which is not the true self. In this case, the naked self, but we're talking on a deeper level, the true self. But you think about the mother. Well, the mother's just there to do you a service. She doesn't want to hurt you. She's not going to hurt you. She's very loving, but she knows you need to be scrubbed clean. So she's going to do it mercilessly. You can scream and cry. She's going to scrub you anyway, with your best interest at heart. And this is what I love about the goddesses when you look at them. Some have 10 hands, some have 8 hands, some have 6 hands, but some have 4 hands. But inevitably what you're going to see is some hands have these weapons. They're fierce, they're strong. And then they've got hands in the blessing mudra. They're blessing us. Those weapons are there to bless us, actually, to free us of that dirt. And so the first few days of Navratri, it said, in some ways it's the whole time, but especially the first few days, are really that clearing out time of that fierce mother energy just sweeping through you. I think about Mother Ganga like this a lot. Here we are on her banks, and for me, one of the really powerful meditations that I do and love to share is this meditation of really feeling Ganga flowing through you. Just a couple months ago in the middle of the monsoon season, she's super high. You can't believe it. It's like Ganga takes over Rishikesh. And she sweeps through. And she sweeps through everything in her path. Homes, hotels, cars, shops, whatever it may be. And she just sweeps everything up. In fact, in the story of Ganga first coming onto earth, she swept away all of the priests doing all of their pujas along the banks of the riverbed, and hence she agreed, and Lord Shiva agreed, that she would come instead of just in this intractably powerful form, washing everything away, that she would come first into Shiva's hair and then come out of his hair much more gently onto the earth. But her form is this, you hear the word rambunctious sometimes, but I don't actually think that's the right English word. It's much more an intractable, unharnessable power, Shakti, of that spirit. And I think about her sometimes with this, where I feel as I meditate her waters literally flowing through. And you think about, like if you had a pot, if you've been cooking khichdi and it's kind of still stuck to the inside of the pot, and then you run fast water from your tap over it. Well, even if you don't scrub it with your hands, that fast water inevitably is going to get a whole bunch of the gunk that is stuck to your pot away. If you held it under there long enough, if you weren't worried about wasting water, and the water were powerful enough, you almost could clean the pot without actually ever putting your hand in there. And I think about and feel her waters like that, just flowing through us, clearing from us. Ego, ignorance, illusion, attachment, all of that that keeps us so stuck. So those are the first 3 days, but again, it really pervades the whole time. And then the second 3 days are said to be really powerful for the worship of Mahalakshmi, whom of course we will worship with great love and excitement and lots of energy in a couple of weeks on Diwali. But Mahalakshmi is she's the goddess of prosperity, of abundance. But she's really misunderstood because people think she's the goddess of cash. And she's not. She's not an ATM machine. She's not a bank teller. It's not about you put in your card into the wall or you put a tilak on her and suddenly cash flows out like you were standing at some divinely cosmic ATM machine. She's the goddess of real abundance, real prosperity, which is all about how we feel about what we have rather than actually what we have. I have known, and I imagine many of you have known, plenty of people who are financially really rich, but whose felt sense experience is of not having enough. And so even though you may look at them and think, oh my God, if I only had that much money, but the person who has it is actually moving through their world with a profound sense of lack and not enoughness. So essentially they're poor. It doesn't matter how much they have. And then there are people, easy to find in India, especially in the Indian villages, who have nothing by our Western standards. And all they want to do is share. We just had this beautiful experience when we were up in Yamunotri, where first time I've ever been there, didn't know anybody there in advance, had never met anybody, hadn't done some kind of program there, nothing. We were just there as pilgrims. And on the very first day there, these beautiful people just insisted we must come to their house. Not wealthy people at all. And we were, 8, 9, 10 people? You must come home. Come for lunch. Come for tea. We agreed. We went over in the afternoon. And they shower you. Flowers and malas and shawls and gifts and not just, more and more cups of tea, but they bring out the nuts and the things that are really expensive. Nuts seem really simple to us from abroad, but they're actually really quite expensive in India. They're considered quite a luxury here. People we don't even know. People who absolutely are not financially abundant in any material way. But all they want to do is give and give and give. And God, if we had stayed for lunch, dinner, they would have been so happy. That's abundance. That's actually the gift that Mahalakshmi gives us, is the awareness that regardless of how much I have, my cup runneth over. And once we have that experience, which actually arises from divine connection, that's the key. That is what is needed to know my cup runneth over. Because when I have a connection to the divine, in any religion, it doesn't matter. The divine by any name or any form or any path, it doesn't matter. But when I have that connection, then I have everything. Then I have everything. There's a great story that Pujya Swamiji told me, God, like within the first month of me being here. And it was a story of a king. He told it to me as I was doing one of my very first sevas, which was a translation of the prayers that we sing in the 5 o'clock in the morning universal prayers that are in Hindi. So he had me do a translation, and I didn't know anything. Zero about, obviously, the Hindi language, but zero about India, Hinduism, nothing I knew. So he had to make everything very, very simple for me. So in one of the prayers, it's just talking about, God, you are everything. You are everything. I am nothing. You are everything. I just want you in my life. And so Pujya Swamiji said, he said, there was a king. And the king had many wives, as kings used to do. And the king had gone off to conquer other lands. Again, as kings used to do. And as he was about to leave to come back home, he sent a message to all of his wives to send him a list of whatever they wanted. Fine silks, jewels, spices, the sorts of things one could imagine if one were a queen at that time, that you might want your husband, the king, to bring you back from far-off lands. And all of the queens sent back lists except one, who sent back a piece of paper that just had the number 1 written on it. And the king says to his minister, king was a very good man, but not a super brilliant man. So he says to his minister, who traditionally were always the wise men who would advise the king, typically very spiritual men, sages, rishis. So he says to his minister, she is stupid. What does this mean, 1? Everybody else understood. They made a list. 1? What is 1? And the minister says, by 1 she means you are her number 1. She just wants you. And the king says, oh. So he sends carriages with the silks and the gems and the spices to his other queens. And he goes personally to that queen. And as Pujya Swamiji said at that time, I can still hear his voice. He says, and of course, wherever the king goes, everything goes. Obviously, all of the carriages, all of the everything is going to follow where the king is. And the message, of course, had nothing to do with kings and saris and spices and jewels, and everything to do with God. That when we want from God something, we may get it. God might answer our prayers. Oh God, I want an A on this exam. Oh God, give me this job or this house or this, partner in life. We may get it. But ultimately, the highest and most beautiful and important prayer is just, oh God, I want you. And then, of course, as a beautiful byproduct, wherever God goes, well, everything goes. Where the king is, all of the carriages are there. So Mahalakshmi is that goddess who gives us that divine connection, that experience of being one with God, in which we know everything is there. And then the last 3 days, out of that beautiful experience and awareness of abundance and fullness, comes wisdom. Ma Saraswati. She's the goddess of not facts and figures, but really deep wisdom and what we would call gyan. And that gyan can only arise when first we've been emptied in the first few days by Ma Durga, by Ma Kali, of all of that blocks Gyan from us. We might be seated at the feet of the most enlightened guru, the most enlightened master. But if we are stuck in our minds with what we think we know or who we think we are, what we think we need, we can't get anything. We may read all of the books, we may learn everything, we may do everything. But if there's no room for that gyan to flow, can't come in. It's like the tap is on, but your bucket is upside down, right? You've noticed in India, we bathe from buckets. So you turn on the tap and you put the bucket. But if the bucket is upside down, even if the tap is on, you're not going to get any water. And so Ma Durga, Ma Kali, you can think of them really as the ones who kind of help us get our bucket the right way up so that we can really absorb and benefit from and be transformed by that wisdom. So these last few days are days dedicated to the real wisdom. Who am I? Who am I? And that awareness of each of us both as undivided spirit, soul, divinity, consciousness, but also each of us with very beautiful opportunities to play in service as instruments. That aspect that goes hand in hand, inextricably linked with Gyan, is karma. And that way of having every action be that which is done out of yoga, out of an awareness of, an experience of union and oneness and truth. That every action we do, it's not, oh yeah, Saturday morning volunteered at the battered women's home for an hour. Okay, karma yoga, check. It's not that. I mean, that's great. We all should volunteer at battered women's shelters. But the point is, karma yoga, our service is, it's every minute, it's every moment. It's a constant question to God. How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? We may not always know the answer, but as long as we ask the question, we're opening ourselves to that. And of course, this is the same as that beautiful prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. It's not just a Hindu teaching, it's a universal divine teaching. Oh God, make me an instrument of thy grace, an instrument of thy mercy. Right? Let me, where there is darkness, let me bring light. Where there is despair, hope. This is what we're here to bring. So during these beautiful days, don't worry if you're kind of out of order or jumping in the middle, it's okay. Of course, all of the aspects of the Divine Mother are one anyway. But just recognize that these are really the three aspects that are happening through us and in the energy of the universe at the moment for us to tap into. So with that overview of Navratri, I'm very happy to open it up to any questions that any of you might have. Yes.
Sorry, it's two questions in one.
That's okay.
My spiritual life is full of doubts, I think.
My spiritual life is?
Full of doubts.
Oh, full of doubts, okay.
So the first question is, do you have some? And the second is, if yes, what do you do with it?
Beautiful. His spiritual life is full of doubts. Do I have doubts? And if so, what to do about them? I don't have doubts about God. I definitely have doubts about my ability to channel God's presence. I definitely have doubts about my ability to step up as the clear channel that I so much want to be, and to be that clear channel through which God can flow. A prayer that I have every day, I've had it for 27 years, and it is still the most powerful prayer for me, is essentially just, oh God, make me worthy. Make me worthy. Wash through that within me that is blocking me from seeing you, knowing you, serving you, being a pure vessel for you. So I don't doubt the existence of, the presence of, the perfection of, but I would very much love to continue to be able, even in an expedited way, to refine the instrument with which I am able to understand and interact with that divine. Yes. Yes.
Jai Gange, Pranam.
Pranam.
Primarily, I have again 2 questions.
Can you
please.
hold the mic just a little closer?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I do have 2 questions, please.
That's okay.
Primarily, being here, it's such a breathable, freedom, liberated feeling. But why doesn't the same feel when we're back home? And routines and responsibilities seems to be so burdensome on a daily basis.
Yeah.
How do we actually, cruise through it with the divine's intervention, please?
Great. So this is a really common and really important question. People come here, God, it's so peaceful, it's so beautiful, it's so divine. I feel so peaceful and connected and divine. Why do I not feel that when I go back? A lot of it has to do with consciousness. A very dear and beloved friend of mine, and a very renowned researcher and author and teacher named Dr. Bruce Lipton, speaks about something he calls the honeymoon effect. Now, he talks about it actually as a honeymoon, but I'm going to bring it into our spiritual practice in a moment. And the honeymoon effect that he talks about is how when you're first in a relationship and you have a honeymoon phase, everything is perfect and oh my God, you just love each other so much. And you melt and you merge into that love of each other. And then fast forward a few years, or sometimes even maybe just a few months, and you're dealing with who's going to grocery shop, who's going to take out the trash, which school the kids are going to go to, whose turn it is to do what. And suddenly you seem to have fallen out of love. And he speaks about the way of getting back into that honeymoon phase, being that it's all about conscious mind versus subconscious mind. And when we bring it into spirituality, it's actually exactly the same thing. Actually, even more so. Because with another human being, you might actually decide at some point you don't like them after all. I mean, it certainly is possible that that person whom you thought you were in love with turns out to be uniquely unworthy of your love or liking. I mean, you may decide that they're not nearly as honest or caring or compassionate or loving or open or spiritual or giving or any of these things that they had sort of pretended to be. But with God, that never happens. So spiritually, it's interesting because You can never really blame the other one. It's like, well, it's your fault. I mean, you used to be so much nicer. Right? I mean, we can't really say that to God. What happens with us is, when you're in a place like this, you're very anchored in your conscious mind. There's not a lot to distract you. Yes, these days we now have our phones, but chances are you're on them a lot less than you are when you're back in your other world. And you're able to just actually be here right now. To be in this beautiful morning, this beautiful sunshine, this beautiful air, this beautiful satsang. You get up, you're able to be in a yoga posture, to be in a meditative experience, to be walking on the banks of Ganga. You're fully present. In that full presence, you experience real happiness, peace, connection, divine presence, because that divine presence is always there. We just don't tap into it. But you're here, and when you're here, then everything is beautiful, because I'm here. The dilemma happens when you go back and you get distracted and there's errands to run and things to do and our minds are all over the place. So we're never actually there. God is still there. That peace, that joy, that meaning, that divinity, that connection is still there, but we are no longer there. We are all stuck in to-do lists and errands and fights in the office place or fights in the home or fights with the neighbors or inundated with the news that we get every day when we turn on our phone or whatever it may be. So we're not there. The way to hold on to this experience is learn how to be present. So that when you go back, you can stay present. Really practice conscious mindfulness, conscious being present, conscious awareness, so that you develop a skill that when you go back, you can keep tapping into. Yeah. Yes.
I want to know the difference between soul, human soul, and supreme soul. Sometimes they confuse. They call Atma, Jivatma, and Parmatma.
Okay.
So if you can explain the difference
Yeah.
between them, please. Thank you.
So Atma means soul. And there's different ways that we speak about the soul. One is the Jivatma, which is this individual soul. That aspect which takes this form. Now that soul has with it a karmic package, right? We know that our soul is having birth and death and birth and death in order to work through its full karmic package, its full karmic journey. So my karmic bank account is that which is going to stay with me from one life to another life. So the Jiv Atma is that soul which is attached to, joined by, my specific karmic package. I may have a different body, different name, different shape, different everything in the next life. But the karmic package is still the same. It also has the subtle body. When we speak about, I won't go into it now because it's a whole other lecture, but when we speak about the 5 koshas, maybe that's something Gayatriji can talk to you about at some point. But when we speak about the five different koshas, the different bodies, beginning with our physical body, the Annamaya kosha that's made up of Quite literally, the food we eat creates our body. Then we move through our vital body, the body of the prana, the body of the mind, the body of the intellect, and ultimately the bliss body, Anandamaya Kosha. But I mention it here because other than the physical body, the other bodies are what we consider the subtle body. That travels with the soul. We also think about it as man, buddhi, ahankar. Stays with the soul. It's why we do sadhana. It's why we pay attention to sanskaras. Otherwise, why bother? That which you learn, you don't carry on to your next life. So you got to learn algebra again. You're going to have to go through, learning how to spell all over again. You don't get to take it from one life to another life. But the impressions upon the mind and the intellect, what we call sanskaras, but you can think about them as kind of neural impressions, habits of my psyche, habits of my way of thinking, aspects of my ego, my ability to access truth versus falsehood. That stays with me. All of those fruits that my sadhana gives me of understanding truth, working through my ego, that stays with you. That's the subtle body, or aspects of the subtle body. So Jiva Atma is that which is the soul. It's not impacted by my physical body. It's there long after my physical body dies. But it is individual in that it has my individual karmic package, my individual subtle body. The sadhana that I do in this life is impacting that subtle body that travels with the soul, that's going to determine my next birth. Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, is that into which my Jivatma merges when my karmic journey is complete. When my karmic bank account is at 0, the Jivatma, individual soul, merges into the Supreme Soul like a drop merges back into the ocean. Every drop of water on earth is going toward the ocean. You can take water to the top of the tallest building and drop it from there, it's going to come down. We call it gravity, but the reason that it works, gravity is just a name for it. The reason that it happens is because water is returning to its source. Water evaporates by the clouds, it gets carried by the wind, it gets dropped in all different places, but regardless of where it's dropped, it comes down. Over the ground, under the ground, always going back to the ocean, until ultimately that drop merges with the ocean. Along the way, we may call it Ganga. We may call it the sewer. We may call it my swimming pool. It's being dropped in a whole bunch of different places and therefore having different names and different forms, just like this Jivatma is taking different names and forms along its journey. But ultimately, when that drop of water merges back with the ocean, there's no more Ganga, sewer, swimming pool. It's just ocean. When my karmic package, my journey, is complete, then my Jivatma merges back into Paramatma. And that is the time that my subtle body finally disintegrates. Otherwise, it stays with the individual soul. Other questions? Thank you. Yes, yeah.
4 years back, hello, 4 years back, I left my job and came to this place, and it started my spiritual journey.
Wonderful.
most of the time I spend in yoga, meditation, and normal work, and I'm very happy with that also. But many times I feel that I'm searching for something, although I'm happy, and I don't know what I'm searching for.
Great. So this is a great question because a lot of people think, God, if I could just be free of my job, if I could just quit my job, or if I could just be free of the responsibilities that weigh me down, then I would be enlightened. Then I would be fully happy. Even forget enlightened, at least I would be happy. Then I would feel full. 4 years ago, he left his job, dedicated himself fully to a spiritual practice, and is wondering, what is it I'm missing? What is it that's not there? The practice is that which enables us to be open to the truth. But you've got to access the truth, otherwise you still feel empty. And that which you're missing is an experience of the fullness of who you are, which interestingly and ironically, as far as this case goes, so many of us are able to access actually through work. This is why karma yoga or seva is spoken about and emphasized as one of the most powerful ways to actually experience divine connection. Most of us think, oh, work, if I could just not have anything to do. But actually, when that work becomes work that you're doing selflessly, doing it for others, doing it not with an intention of what I'm going to get, but just for the experience of doing it. And it's interestingly also why in so many places, the seva that's given, it's not a policy we have here usually, but in a lot of places, the seva that's given is the most menial, uninteresting, low level, not respected. I mean, you have people come in who are doctors and lawyers and whatnot, and they're cleaning toilets. They're chopping carrots. They're mopping the floor. We have a bit of a different philosophy here, which has much more to do with actually using people's skills and abilities and hiring people who really need the money to clean toilets and mop the floor and chop carrots. But either way, the point is that the spiritual experience that comes through seva comes not in what you're doing, but it comes in the act of doing it selflessly. And so whether you are cleaning a toilet or designing a website or writing a grant proposal or working with kids or filing papers or stuffing envelopes or doing dishes or whatever it may be, high level, low level, difficult, easy, doesn't matter. They all have one thing in common, which is to be done simply as instruments. That it's not, oh my God, I'm a doctor, you got me sweeping the floor? Like, come on, I've got 5 people who do that for me at home. Like, really? That's what holds you back. But the joy, the gladness with which in seva we serve. I remember when I first came here, I was a PhD student. Now it was 1996, so the internet was not yet a big thing. We had AOL Mail, but computers were big. I mean, everybody had a computer. I had never seen anybody, I think One time as a very young kid, I had seen somebody in my dad's office on an electric typewriter, but otherwise, we were learning computers from the time I was in elementary school. And I'm 52 now, so. But I come here, and the first seva that Pujya Swamiji gave me was, second seva, take it back, second seva. First seva he gave me was just a manual correcting of phone numbers on cards that was funny because my handwriting is awful. In any case, second seva he gave me was correspondence. Simple, basic correspondence. He was getting invitations to different things and wanted to send blessings to people and regrets that he couldn't come. And they handed me a typewriter, not even an electric typewriter, manual typewriter. Those of you who are young and have no idea what I'm even talking about, Google it. Pale blue, keys, individual keys that popped up and down like that. I mean, forget typing like this, because the amount of finger strength that it actually took to push each key down was incredible. You made a mistake, forget Control Z. You pull out a bottle of whiteout, and you go in between the ribbon and you white it out, and then you wait 30 seconds, and then you move the thing back and you retype the new letter. I had been working on a computer as a PhD student. I was now on a manual typewriter doing the most very basic of correspondence, like Pujya Swamiji is so sorry that he can't attend this beautiful function. He sends you his love and blessings. And I was exuberant. I mean, ecstatic. It was the best work I had ever done. And my friends couldn't believe it. When I finally got an electric typewriter, I started writing letters home, but I couldn't even bear to do that on the manual one. But when I started writing home and sharing with people what I was doing, they couldn't believe it. Like, you're enjoying what? You're doing what? You're spending your day, what? Because as long as you see it as work, then it's all about the excitement or the enjoyment or the self-value that we see in what we're doing. But when it's seva, then it's just this exuberant ability to just be an instrument. And whether it's making a cup of tea, whether it's cleaning a toilet, whether it's chopping a carrot, whether it's writing letters, whatever it may be, it brings you that ecstasy that we don't get in just pure, exclusive, seated sadhana or yoga on the mat. And it's why that practice of karma yoga is so critical and so important. So see what you can get involved in. See the ways that you can be an instrument, and see whether that brings in the missing piece. Wonderful. I don't have any idea what time it is. It doesn't really matter, except you all do have lunch at some point. What time is it? 12:38. Okay, lovely. Well, we are on time by Indian standards. It's time for your lunch. Have a beautiful lunch. And I look forward to seeing you all in the Arati and then the Satsang again this evening. And I hope you're all having a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Navratri. And thank you for being with us for this retreat.